Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Fake Nerds Watch. I'm Brandon T. McClure, joined by my good friends Sparkz Woody. As soon as he
that was
takes
terrible
his sip of
timing.
drink.
Sorry. Yes, I'm here.
And join us on this ride through time and space is our good friend of the show, Xander Hake. How are you, sir? Yeah, all right. Takes a sip as well. We are here.
Doing great.
Classic,
we are here.
Classic fake nerd companion, Xander Hake.
We are here to talk about Doctor Who. All of us are pretty excited that the 60th anniversary is coming up. Well, we're currently in the 60th anniversary month at the time of this recording. And David Tennant's coming back, Catherine Tate's coming back, and we're all pretty jazzed to kind of go back into the world of Doctor Who. So we decided, wouldn't it be fun to talk about? We're going to do a couple of episodes of these. This one is just going to be talking about the Christopher Eccleston season, and the first and the three seasons, seasons of David Tennant's run. So we're not going to be talking about his final specials,
right?
The 4 specials he did for his final year. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to kind of we'll tell you what we're doing next. But we're going to do a couple episodes talking about the different doctors and what our reactions are to them. So let's kick it off. Let's go right away. Let's kick it off. I'm excited. I'm jazzed. I love Doctor Who. I forgot how much I did. I've been going back through it. I've been watching the new stuff. I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to be here. Let's start with Mr. Christopher Eccleston, the 9th Doctor himself. Where do we want to start? I guess with Rose, right? First episode?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I give a little bit before we jump into episodes. I think a place where I'd want to start is to leave it very assured that Eccleston was great.
Yeah.
And got so much flack for being kind of like the first Doctor back to bring it all back. And everybody was like, no, this guy sucks. His episodes are kind of mid. It's whatever. And, then Tennant comes along and everybody sings praises. But you go back to these episodes and almost all of them are bangers.
Yeah, he's so confident also as the Doctor. They knew exactly what this version of the Doctor needed to be, what his story was going to be coming out of the Time War. The Time War, by the way, for nowadays we all know this, but at the time it was not known what this was. This was a new thing that Russell T Davies, the showrunner of the new series, created to kind of do 2 things: give new motivation and a new starting point to people coming into the new show in 2005, and to get rid of what Russell T Davies felt were very boring characters in the Time Lords. He was like, I don't want to deal with Time Lords. I'm going to kill them all.
They're not great.
No, I mean they are quite boring. There's a few good ones. There's a few fun Time Lords that the Master obviously returns in a couple of seasons from now, but he very much was like, I don't want to deal with the Time Lords, so I'm going to kill them all. And it created such an interesting deep rooted guilt from the Doctor, because he being the last of them. And I think ultimately it was a smart move back then.
Well, I think also very much the BBC was writing the line, whether this was Davies' intention or not doesn't really matter. I think they definitely wanted to play with the notion that they could say, if they wanted to, that this had nothing to do with previous Doctor Who.
Sure.
Definitely in that first season, they're yeah, there was a Time War, and maybe that's the first thing the Doctor's left. And I think they were leaving open the possibility to say the history didn't exist. Because I remember when it was such a big deal when you got to the Tennant episode, not to jump too far ahead, where we see the faces in the book. Mm-hmm. And that was the first in-show confirmation that no, that happened. That part of the show is history. And everyone was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it before, but Russell T Davies didn't have to start with the 9th Doctor either. There was a lot of talk apparently behind the scenes about whether or not which doctor to start with. Obviously, Sylvester McCoy was not coming back. He was at this point far too old to come back to the Doctor. But no one was quite sure if they would acknowledge the Paul McGann movie, because America made that movie. Like, why would they? Why would they acknowledge? But Big Finish had been doing at that point for a number of years Doctor Who stories with Paul McGann, and I think it was incredibly interesting that Davies decided, no, we are going to honor the Paul McGann film. It is canon, except as Sparkz mentioned in the previous Victor podcast episode, except for his human mother, which doesn't make any sense. Paul McGann is the 8th Doctor, so the 9th Doctor. So he starts with the 9th Doctor with Christopher Eccleston. I thought that was very smart. It's a really interesting way to look at Doctor Who, as like whether or not the BBC's intention was to be like what it is the original series canon or not. Davies' always kind of intention was that everything was. Yeah. He's very clear about that.
Right.
And I remember going once I realized that Doctor Who has such a long legacy. First off, we all watched this on the Sci-Fi Channel, yeah?
I'm pretty sure the first time I watched it was on DVD.
Probably. The Sci-Fi Channel got the rights to do it, and this was like a year after the show had premiered on the BBC, and so we got it quite late. And so I watched it on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I had no idea that this was a legacy show. I shouldn't say too much more because I'd be talking about a new generation next. So let's kind of like go back. Xander is correct. Eccleston is very good as the Doctor. And I forgot how good he was with Billie Piper, with Rose.
Yeah, I think Eccleston, kind of going back and looking at that season today, without Eccleston's performance, and obviously some other actor on the caliber of his, I don't know if the show works, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you think so?
Well, it's not that it's still written pretty well, but like it's more a budget thing than anything. Like the show looks pretty jank.
Yeah.
When you go back, and you can really see through, like, what I'll say is that there's a level of camp acting which works, but I think it only works because Eccleston is grounding the show around him. That is coming from Billie Piper and the actor that plays Mickey and things like that. Like, they're very camp, and I honestly don't know if it works if you don't have Eccleston at the center of it.
I think that, oh man, it's hard because, like, revamping a legacy show, you already have so many ideas of what that show is, instead of like letting it organically develop as its own thing, which, I mean, the show does anyway down the line. But it's weird to come into what is essentially kind of like a new space and be like, still try to be informed by aspects of what it was previously. So I think some of the camp enters in that way as well, because it's Doctor Who, and like, sure, it had some like pretty serious episodes, but a lot of it was kind of just fun. And it's coming into this kind of thing where it's like tackling episodes that are maybe a little bit more serious, maybe a little bit more actually spooky, and like trying to do all of it in a pretty limited daytime TV budget. I mean, a lot of these episodes later on in like current seasons and whatnot, we're getting like, you know, HBO miniseries budgets. And now and before it was, yeah, this is literally just like, it really is just a TV show. And I feel like we're a little removed from that because of like the budgets around streaming and around, like, you know, how a lot of television is constructed now, that it feels a little campy. And I think the look of the show definitely like also helps kind of what Sparkz is saying as far as how campy it can be. But Yeah, I think it would have gone a way different. I think the show would have continued. I don't think Eccleston's performance made or broke that trajectory. I definitely think it shaped it. And I think we would have had a very different style of Doctor Who if Eccleston wasn't bringing that tone and that ability with him.
I want to mention something about the budgets. Going back and watching Rose, because I went back and watched a couple of episodes before this, and I went back to watch Rose because I was like, oh yeah, I like to see where I'd like to remind myself where it started. There's a moment where Mickey is like a trash can is like attacking Mickey, and he's like stuck to it, and so he would do like a big like exasperated like the trash can ends up being an auton. It's living plastic, which is a classic Doctor Who villain, and then it like attacks him, but like he's not moving anymore in the trash can. So like it's such watching this budget and thinking to yourself, this is what TV looks like. This is what TV budgets used to just be like.
That's true, but most TV shows weren't trying to do as much as Doctor Who was.
That's true. That's true.
And I mean, like, there's still even, I'd say, I'd be willing to argue a bit of a gap between like what network shows were doing at the time with their budgets and what like Sci-Fi Fair was doing at the time, which is more when it starts, I think, closer to the budget of a sci-fi show.
Sure.
Not necessarily like this is around the same time that Heroes is coming out.
Sure, and Battlestar Galactica, and like it's very much like the BBC didn't give Doctor Who the budget that we would have had Doctor Who been an American show.
Right.
The BBC's budgets were far less. Even like now, like the reason why the Disney deal happened is because the BBC still can't give Doctor Who the budget it thinks it deserves. Which is why they're putting a bunch of Disney money into it now, going into the next season. But yeah, even then, I think it's. But you're right in the sense that I also don't think the show works quite as well. But I won't put that all on Eccleston because I also think I don't want Billie Piper to get lost in this because I actually think she's really good in this first season. With Eccleston, and with Eccleston, I think are carrying the show and elevating it in a way that any other two I don't think would have worked very well.
I think she gets better as she goes.
Yeah.
And I think it's partial, and this is why I'm saying, like, I don't mean to discredit her because she's pulling her weight by the end of the season. But I think between the first episode to the last episode, she gets more on Eccleston's page of what he's bringing to the performance. And further away from, like, solely baked in camp, which is where I think she starts. Like, she's much more at where Mickey is. And, like, you can say that's partially, like, the character growing on her adventures with the Doctor, but I think even on an actor level, I think she grows in playing off of Eccleston. Which I think opens her up a lot when she gets to playing off of Tennant as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, she's better with Tennant, I think, than she was with Eccleston.
I do too, but I think that's all. I think that's, like, she gets a foundation here.
Yeah.
And I think that foundation is built in a collaborative way with Eccleston. And I do think Eccleston's kind of driving that ship because that's the nature of the show. That's the nature of the character and the writing as it is the Doctor is driving that ship in this season. But I think Billie Piper is given more opportunity to stretch as a performer because of the things that Eccleston is doing as a performer.
Right. I think Rose is a pretty solid episode to start the series on.
Sure. Yeah.
But this season, Eccleston has some. I think Xander's right. Like, I think the season as a whole does kind of build on itself in a really interesting way. The episodes, in my opinion, just kind of got better and better. I don't really remember if there's one that I particularly don't like. I seem to recall going back to them quite frequently.
I think I like The Long Game, but I do think it's a dip.
The one with Simon Pegg?
Yes.
The goo on the top with the mouth. It's
Yes.
that time, and this. Oh yeah, and it's the mall in space or whatever what that was. Yeah,
Right. But here's the
Yeah.
thing: the episode right before that is Dalek.
which is so good.
Right. That's a big.
So
That's a
good.
very big high. So when you come from
Yeah.
that and go to the long game, like I do think that's a little bit of a dip. But you upturn with Father's Day and the two-parter around the children. Oh,
Yeah.
you my mom.
Iconic.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So talking about that episode specifically, that's the bomb rating one with the gas masks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. That episode for me, especially I think the ending of it where
The
the doctor's
two-parter,
so
by the way.
yeah.
2 episodes.
Oh, okay. Then never mind. The one after it.
The Doctor
Yeah,
dances.
so it's the empty
yeah.
child and the doctor dances. Yeah.
Dances. Okay. So the ending of that. Especially being like so close to the end of the season as well.
Yeah.
That moment where Eccleston like is so elated that
Just this one.
nobody
I've never
dies.
forgotten. I've never forgotten this line. Just this once, Rose. Everybody lives.
Yeah, and there's a reason I think everyone remembers that line from Eccleston because it was so impactful. It was delivered so well. Like the emotion built up to it, and I think going through and watching through everything, I think that's probably the moment that the show figured out its direction. And I think there's
Sure.
like strong episodes before that, you know, Dalek especially, love that episode. But I think there is more of that sort of like camp, more of that, you know, messing around, fun stuff. And then it hits that episode and I'm like, this is what I want the show to be. I want these moments.
Yeah.
And it's not that all the time, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
But the ability to have moments like that, I think was kind of a realization that like, oh, this is good. We can do this in this show.
Right. Dalek, I think, is the dark reflection of what you're talking about. And it's one of the reasons I think that moment hits so high is because in Dalek, you get the beat where he's like, I killed them all. I burnt all the Daleks. You're all that's left. Why shouldn't I kill you too? And he literally starts turning the electricity on it, which is like really intense when you look back on it for the Doctor as a character.
Yeah.
And I think it's because coming out of that raw space and getting to just this once everyone lives is like the joy following pain that he's been in. I think that's really like they parallel to each other in their points in the season really well.
What I really like about Dalek is how it reflects exactly who the Doctor is at that moment. Because this is a Doctor who's just come out of the Time War. The Time War is very fresh to him by the time we meet him in Rose, and he's looking at this, and he's looking at this Dalek, which represents the thing that just in his mind, obviously he blames himself for destroying the Time Lords, but he would never have to do that if the Daleks didn't become this extra galactic menace that kind of happened on his watch, right? How many times has the previous Doctors been able to stop the creation of the Daleks or stop the Daleks, and every time they come back, and like here he's the last of the Time Lords. He can now be like, there's no more Time Lords, but there's no more Daleks, and he's staring down the face of his worst enemy after he thought it was all gone, and he's looking, and I love the kind of just like the raw anger that comes from Eccleston, just to be like, how are you still alive? And then the reveling in the fact that like, yeah, you're the last one, just like I'm the last one. I did it. I killed all of your people.
Right.
But he turns, right? Because he's got Rose and he's got a companion again, and he learns, because that's not who I should be.
Right.
I shouldn't be this person. And I like that. I really like that episode, which goes back to what you're talking about, Sparkz, following that up with the empty child and Dr. Dances, to be like, this is the person I want to be. I want to be the person that saves everyone again.
Right.
It's such a
go ahead.
Okay. No, it's such a on one hand, I understand why Eccleston didn't have another season.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Aside, politics aside and all that. But man, it really feels like he was really, really coming into his own right as they change him.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame because he starts strong and it feels like the show catches up to where he is instead of him catching up to the show, which is something I felt with other doctors.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the show is racing to meet him at what he wants to do with the Doctor, and not the other way around.
I do want to talk about Captain Jack Harkness.
Sure.
Because the Empty Child is where we meet him. We meet Captain Jack in that episode, right. and he continues on to the end of that season. Sorry, it's not a cat. It's not a TARDIS coming to take you away. I freaking loved Captain Jack Harkness as a kid. I was in love with this man. I should have realized my sexuality a long time ago because of Captain Jack Harkness. That dude was not only my biggest crush, but definitely my sexual awakening. That was 100% because I love the idea of he's from the 51st century. He's a time traveler. He's also a time traveler. But he's human at a point in the human timeline that has invented time travel. And because of his point in the timeline, he'll fuck anything. Sorry, he'll screw anything. PG-13. And there was something about that spoke to me, and I really should have figured out why a lot earlier than I did.
Sure.
So Captain Jack is definitely a bicon.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously you didn't see Brendan Fraser in The Mummy before that, so I understand.
It was a different awakening for Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. That was I think I'm attracted to this entire cast, but I don't know why.
No, that's fair. Yeah, Captain Jack, I think, is the only character, recurring or not, I think during that first season that I think is really able to meet Eccleston immediately.
Oh, sure. They're written on the same level also.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, acting wise and everything, it feels like he comes in and echoes and they're both where they need to be. And seeing everyone else catch up to Eccleston and all of a sudden being oh, here's just this guy that gets it. Was really refreshing to see. I think it helped a lot with that dynamic and liking Jack as a character as well. So yeah, no, it was really great. It's definitely introduction to a character you don't think you'll see again.
Yeah, and then he comes back to life at the end of the episode. Before we talk about the final episode, though, I want to ask you guys what are your guys' opinion on the Slitheen? Which are the other species? Which is the species in this season that are seen the second most because they're in 3 episodes.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Which is wild to me.
I think even on my most generous of standards, there's just been better aliens since then. It's hard to regard them very lovingly.
Yeah.
I don't think they're as terrible as they often get lauded to be, but I'd be lying if I said their episodes aren't their main 2 episodes aren't the least interesting of the season to me.
Right. The zipper on the head. I do remember the zipper on the head being quite an iconic image for a while.
Yeah, sure.
But then it's paired up with their farts.
Right.
That's how you know because they're just compressed so much that their suits just keep farting.
I think the
There's
fart thing was maybe like it wasn't even that it existed. Like farts can be funny. I think it was just overused.
there's a great line by Eccleston. Where do you mind not farting during my inspirational speech, please?
Yeah,
Which
I
is
think
pretty funny.
I think like they're fun for lines like Harriet Jones being like, when they farted, if you'll pardon my word, the fart,
Mhm.
if you'll pardon my word, smelled like, and I'm like, cute. I think overstay their welcome.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the Celine are a good one episode bad guy that got stretched to 3.
Yeah, and I don't even know why. Um,
And I say that knowing that like I like that last third episode with them, but I like it mostly because of how it ends.
Looking at this season, so interesting because you really only have 2 Doctor Who villains that are classic from the classic. I don't know about the long game, the species that Simon Pegg works for. I think that's original. Um, but the Dalek and the Autons are really the only 2, and you got to admire that restraint.
Sure.
To not just kind of like throw in like every episode is an old Doctor Who villain, but like really to just try to right, we get the Slitheen, but like really try to like make your own new villains and follow it that way.
I agree with that. I also think that again goes back to like the BBC's hesitancy in general with this first season to have it too tied to previous Doctor Who.
Right.
So there is an expectation of like make new,
Sure.
make
Right.
better.
Now we should talk about his regeneration because I remember not knowing what the hell was going on.
Well, before we talk about the regeneration, I think just one last thing is the season's very well done integration of the Bad Wolf story, which this credit goes to Russell T Davies.
Yes, absolutely. I also want to mention, just offhandedly because I like it, but the Charles Dickens is in an episode, and I quite like that episode because
No, it's a good one.
The actor who plays Charles Dickens is just like the Charles Dickens actor, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's great.
Wow, shots fired at Dan Stevens.
No,
So
but like he's the guy who like always plays Charles Dickens anyway.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sure.
Yeah. Sorry,
so
Xander, what were you saying?
on the topic of Bad Wolf,
Yeah.
going back and kind of being like, oh, okay, so it's these messages that have been everywhere. Then it's like, oh, it was this thing that, like, the messages were always meant to be there. There's like this whole thing that ties it back, and it's like, cool, that's really cool. And I feel like they also thought I was really cool because I feel companions leaving things and doing things in the past for the Doctor constantly comes back to happen.
What? No, it doesn't.
I
What are you
don't
talking about?
I don't. Hold on. Well, I don't. It certainly happened a lot with Moffat's era. I'm trying to recall how often it happened during the Tennant era. Because his first season wasn't necessarily like that.
Right. No. That's fair. I think it is more of a like after Tenet, they kind of like
became,
reuse
like, a
some
thing.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Clara specifically.
Yes, specifically the stuff with Clara. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you. My opinion.
Yeah.
Clara is a better executed version of what Bad Wolf is doing.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
We'll talk about it. I need to rewatch some of that stuff because I remember not liking it at the beginning. But we will wait.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. I want to talk about Eccleston's regeneration because as a person who was just watching this kooky sci-fi show on the Sci-Fi Channel, not knowing that it's a legacy show, not knowing what Doctor Who is, the moment Eccleston regenerates into David Tennant was the biggest what the hell moment I remember having it on TV as a kid. Like,
sure,
because it looked like he was dying, and I was like, oh my god, what's he gonna do? And then he changes his face to another person, and I was like, what just happened? What did you guys think about? How did you guys feel about that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Brandon. I don't 100% remember the circumstances, but I certainly wasn't completely thrown off guard by it.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember if you told me the specifics or you just told me something along the lines of, well, let me know when you get to the end of the season. But you certainly left like an expectation in my brain, whether I knew or not, that I remember being like, oh, this is what he was talking about.
But you had seen Doctor Who prior, hadn't you? Watched some of the stuff with your parents?
You mean like classic Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I just knew about it from my mom.
I see.
I knew they wanted to watch Doctor Who because of watching that stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, it was the show back in the 60s and the 70s." And I was like, "Oh, neat."
I love the voice of your parents. Yeah, it was the show.
It's exactly what they sound like.
And Xander, you were in the same boat.
Yeah. My mom was the classic Who fan that I had no idea about. And then she also had no idea about the new show. We both saw an episode of Tennant's run first together.
Oh, I see.
And she was like, "Oh, did they redo Doctor Who?" And I was like, "Did they redo what?" Yeah, so I think we watched 2 episodes, I think, of the Tennant era. And then we basically found the previous episode and then started from the first season.
Yeah.
So I already knew, like, my shock was reversed. My shock was like, who's this?
Yeah, you go back to episode 1 and you're like, wait, did they recast this guy?
Yeah, exactly. So I knew that the Doctor changed. I didn't know how that happened. So it was definitely interesting because it was more of an expectation of being like, wait, how does this happen?
Yeah. I'm glad that I didn't, in hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't know about the regeneration. Because it not only threw me by surprise, which was really exciting, but also it helped me go through the Netflix DVD system to get a bunch of old Doctor Who episodes to revisit that old show, to be like, oh, what was the show like back then? Like I was on Wikipedia all the time and looking up all the references to the different. Wikipedia has a thing, had a thing. I don't know if it still does. On the Doctor Who episodes, when it would be like connections to the classic series, and so you would read like, oh, and this is the reference to the classic series, and so I would read all that, and then I would go find the episode on Netflix and request the DVD and shit. I watched a lot of Doctor Who episodes through that. It was a lot of fun.
Sure, sounds like it.
So I guess we should move it to David Tennant.
Yeah, bye, Eccleston. Sorry, we only got one season with you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
What do you guys think that second season would have looked like?
I don't know.
I
think they still.
This at length.
I think they still would have largely done the Rose and the Doctor falling in love story.
Yeah, probably. The seeds were planted in the Eccleston season.
Yeah.
Xander, you said, were you being sarcastic that you thought about it at length?
No. I actually have thought about it.
Can you summarize?
Because I really enjoyed Eccleston. Yeah, in a brief summary, it plays into the like non-plot relevant stories that we got in Tennant. Would probably be kind of the same for Eccleston. I think a lot of those adventures and the way it will go as far as like the writing and stuff probably would have gone in the same direction. I do think that it would have been a much darker take. I think it would have not been as kind of like happy-go-lucky fun because Tennant brings a lot of that in.
Yeah.
So I think that the intense moments that like Tennant has would have been standard for Eccleston.
Tennant is so much. Tennant is he knew exactly what he wanted to do with Doctor Who because of how much of a fan he was of the classic series, and so I'm sure he always knew, like, if I ever got the opportunity to play the Doctor, this is how I would do it. And when he shows up, that's exactly what he does.
Yeah,
he's very much, in my opinion, the only Doctor that from the jump knows exactly what he's doing. In my opinion, anyway.
Of the modern era?
Of the modern era, yeah.
I think I might champion Matt Smith a little bit.
You see, Matt Smith for me, he took a season for me to really like, and even then, I prefer what he does with the Doctor in his Clara seasons than his Amy seasons.
Sure, preferring it is one thing, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that he didn't know what he wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
If anything, what he wanted to do with it, I think, was fought by the writing.
I think,
but I wouldn't.
Sorry,
go ahead, Xander.
Okay, and I think the first episode is I think maybe the best explanation between both of them. It shows very well the characters that they want to be. So instead of, I think instead of being like, oh, one did, one didn't, it Matt Smith's season, I think his first season starts out a little weaker than Tennant's as far as like intention and their characterization as the Doctor. I think their first episodes land pretty much the same as far as like, oh, this is the kind of Doctor I want to play.
Sure.
I just feel Tennant is more able to follow through on that, in part because he's not fighting the writing. They really start writing to him.
Yeah.
So
pretty much right away, they're like, we know how to write the actor. Yeah, I think I don't rewatch the Matt Smith seasons as often as I do the David Tennant seasons. I basically remember every episode that David Tennant has ever done because of how much I've rewatched them in my life. And I haven't done that with Matt Smith, which is why I'm happy we're doing this, because I will go back and rewatch some Matt Smith episodes. So that'll be really interesting to do. But I really like this first season. This first season has a lot of some of my favorites. I think him and Billy Piper have great chemistry. I think they're really good together. One of the things that Davies does really well is like create this like expanded cast of characters, like that the Doctor is exacerbated by, like Mickey, like Jackie, like Harriet. Even the face of Bo shows up.
No, you already said Jack.
Yeah, that's fair. That's cute. And I really like how he like interacts with these characters, and especially like as the 10th Doctor, as David Tennant, he treats Mickey like a pet.
Yeah,
which I think is pretty fun. There's the girl in the fireplace episode where he's got the horse following him, and Rose is like, "You can't keep the horse. I'd let you keep Mickey."
Mickey is so weird because like,
so weird.
You cast like an actor who it's like everybody knows sucks, and then you write the character because you know everybody seems to think he sucks.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, like they gave that guy no chances.
No, they really didn't.
No.
This is also the season that reintroduces Sarah Jane Smith.
Sure.
A third and fourth
in a really not as good as it could have been episode.
It's a rough episode going back to it.
Oh, it breaks my heart because it's also Anthony Stewart Head's episode.
No.
And like he is horrendously used. Like that is a tough rewatch, that epistive.
I went back to rewatch that one. There's things I really like in it. I think Sarah Jane and Rose are fun together.
Yes, obviously.
They have some really great banter back and forth. I think David Tennant is so clearly happy to be acting with a classic Who companion.
100%.
K9. I love K9.
Unfortunately, a whole other plot is happening around those things.
Yeah,
so it's not very good.
I've mentioned before on the show how much I hate like hacking shots, because it's just a bunch of people like just typing on a computer keyboard as fast as they can.
I got to tell you guys, like,
no sense of what they're doing.
It's really tough to say it because it is the return of Sarah Jane Smith, but I think that might be like the low point of the entire Tennant run.
Oh, let me see.
I don't know if an episode gets lower to me.
Which one is Fear Her? Oh, Fear Her is the Olympics episode. That's pretty good. Idiot's Lantern? What's that one? What is the Idiot's Lantern? As the coronation of Elizabeth II nears the streets of... What is this episode? I don't remember this episode at all.
Isn't this the one with where they're like it's their first exposure to the television and they're all watching the coronation and it's like
vaguely remember that
sucking away their faces.
This season as a whole is not as strong as the first season.
I don't know if I agree with that.
There's quite a few episodes here that I'm just like, yeah, they're okay. However, there's a lot of strong episodes here. I think the 2-parter with the Cybermen is great.
Yeah.
I think that episode is legitimately great. The Girl in the Fireplace, excellent episode.
Really good.
Really great episode.
Two of my favorites from the entire Tennant run are the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit.
Oh, I love those two. They're really so good. Yeah,
I love the Satan Pit so much.
Satan Pit's so good.
When he's just hanging in nothingness, just talking to Rose, he's like, I don't even know if you can hear me.
This is also probably a good time, I think, because I listened to the music from that episode in particular a lot. Yeah. To shout out Murray Gold.
Love Murray Gold.
Also, Murray Gold, a big reason why Doctor Who is successful.
Yeah, I like Murray Gold quite a bit.
Is the Satan Pit where the first introduction of the Ood?
It's the Impossible Planet, but yes, the 2-parter.
Yeah. The 2-parter.
The Impossible. Right. God,
yes.
2-parters keep getting me.
Yeah.
Yes. No. The Ood became. They were such like a fan favorite for so much of the Tennant run.
They still are. Like they're still a fan favorite. I would argue. Them and the Silence are probably 2 of the most beloved of the new creations.
There is a I don't know if this is a Big Finish creation, and I actually don't know when he was created, but during the Time Lord Victorious event that happened for the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, much of that event was centered around an assassin Ood, who is who seemingly is mild mannered. You Sparkz, I don't know. I know you know this, but Xander, do you know about the protocol droid 000 in Star Wars? So it's kind of like psychotic protocol droid.
He's basically evil C-3PO.
Got it.
This is who that
like
Ood
evil.
is.
Yeah, it's that evil Ood. Yeah. No, there's like a lot of the new creatures and stuff I think are fun. And I'm not saying like they're not well done. I just that lasting power, that real impression, they don't really get the time I think to develop as much because you get like a really good like basis of a character. They do more stories where they reincorporate, and I think the aliens and the species that you see more often are the ones that fans start gravitating to because they're like, oh, there's more to love.
I'm sorry, it's in a different season, but there is one more iconic of the new creations beyond the Ood and the other one I just said a second ago that I can't remember. The Silence.
Well,
it's the Weeping Angels.
Oh, Weeping Angels, quite iconic. Of course.
Hands down,
the most. Yes,
hands down, easily. 100%.
Although I will say this take and not expand on it until the next time we talk, but immediately overused. Immediately iconic and then immediately overused.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like they grabbed people so hard that absolutely they went hard on them.
Yeah.
And like we can get more into that later, and like you're gonna see some more Weeping Angel stuff in Whittaker's run.
Oh, yay.
But here's the thing is like, just like Daleks and Cybermen, like if you've got the good reason to use them in a good story, like it doesn't matter. And I will argue this is one of the reasons I like Whittaker's 3rd season. This is down the road conversation, but is because I do think it's a good use of the Weeping Angels.
Sure.
Can I also mention very quickly how it really speaks to the show that as we talk about it, we have to keep referencing all the other parts of it. I don't think every show really is able to carry that. I think as well as Doctor Who, it's just really interesting to constantly be brought to all the other aspects of it and how they kind of like are either used or play in. It's just it's interesting.
The thing I love about Doctor Who, and why I don't want it to ever really go away now, is I think Doctor Who is the ultimate format and template for storytelling. You can tell any story in Doctor Who. You're really not limited by anything whatsoever. You can make up whatever you want to tell whatever story you want inside of Doctor Who. And I think it's also the reason why I'm like, I'll take an episode every once in a while that I'm not a big fan of for like a banger that we get in a season. Like,
yeah,
some of those.
No, I agree.
I think every season of Doctor Who has had like one episode that I'm like, that's a great episode of Doctor Who, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's ever been broken.
Go ahead.
Can I move us into Doomsday for the end of that Tennant's first season?
Yeah. So well, I'll bounce you in because I want to say I think it was really interesting that instead of bringing back the Cybermen, by the way, are exactly what I want. I want Star Trek to do with the Borg. This idea that like on other planets, in different time periods, the Cybermen have just shown up. Like it is an inevitable evolutionary moment that Cybermen show up, and I want that to happen with the Borg also. But what I really like about what I find so interesting about this introduction of the Cybermen is that they're it's a parallel dimension version of the Cybermen, which is such an interesting idea. Just to be like, no, this isn't a Cybermen colony from Mondas or wherever this has happened. This is a parallel Earth has created Cybermen. Right. And on this Earth, Jackie Tyler is happily married to Rose's father, who's still alive.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way that they went about it, and I thought that was really good, especially having like the Cybermen earlier and then the Cybermen again, and the Cybermen and the Daleks ultimately. It made season 2 feel really grand at the time and really big in a heavy hitting way. I think it's really funny that they're like, yeah, these Cybermen, they're from a parallel dimension. That's why we made like new slick designs. They're much bulkier, and I'm like, that's just the Cybermen from now on.
Yeah, that's it. We've done it.
Well, we really liked it, so the Cybermen look like that now.
They are.
The 2-part finale, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, as Andrew was about to talk about, are really interesting. I love the kind of like, we've got 2 mysteries here that we think are the same. We've got this ghost wave thing, and we've got this sphere thing that nobody can really look at comfortably. What are these things? How are they connected? And it turns out, and then when the Cyberman shows up, like, we don't know what that sphere thing is either. And they're like, excuse me? What the hell is this thing?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good reveal, and then it turns out they're the Daleks, which are... this was the first time in Doctor Who history that the Daleks and the Cybermen have occupied the same episodes. And it was such a good moment. It's such a big kind of reveal.
It's the first time in history that they're in the same scenes. They were both in the 5 Doctors. They were just in separate scenes.
Okay, but there wasn't like armies of the 2 of them.
Sure.
But you did get me with that one. I'll acknowledge the flub. But it felt different here.
Yeah, I get you.
I think this 2-parter was really fun. Especially when they're bickering back and forth. It's some of the funniest dialogue between the Daleks and the Cybermen just insulting each other.
Yeah. I love that they hate each other.
Yeah, me too.
Right? There's beauty in there.
There is beauty in there. And this also we have to say goodbye to Rose.
Yeah. Okay. So that's specifically where I want to touch on.
Yeah.
The absolute stranglehold that scene on the beach had on me as a teenager was insane.
Yeah.
that the whole like build up to being like, oh, they're gonna be separated. Like he can't fix this. And I think in New Who up until then, there was always like some way that like the important parts were able to be like resolved or stayed or fixed. Even with the Doctor, he dies, but he comes back. He's different, but he's back. It felt so final.
I think the one exception, just to say, is I think the only other like loss that they really take in all of this, like heavy loss up to this point, is the Satan pit.
Right. Yes. No.
Like that, totally leaves them rough.
Yeah.
Rattled. Yeah.
And in that, it was really interesting. In my mind, before we went into this, Rose was in much more of Tennant's life than I thought.
Oh yeah.
Like I was so sure she had way more than just his first season.
Well, she comes back.
And no, and like that's fair, but I mean like as really a like adventuring companion,
Sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like yes, they start to build that dynamic in the at the start of the new series. You have the Doctors here. They start this kind of like pseudo romantic dynamic, but it doesn't fully develop. And you see that like Rose kind of has a thing for the Doctor, but then the Doctor changes and she's like, well, do I still have a thing for you? And the answer is yes. And
the answer is you look younger now, so yes.
Right, exactly. And that's it. And then it's 2 seasons, and then it's over. And the Doctor and Rose have like instant chemistry. I think it's written, their whole like flirty dynamic is written really well.
Sure, I agree.
Yeah. And then he gets that moment where he's like, Rose, and it's over. And he's devastated. And I'm like, oh my God. I think the reason I think Rose is in so much more of it is because like that scene lived in my head for so long.
Yeah. It's something, man. Like it was. This was the first companion loss we've had to experience, like as Doctor Who fans, really, and it was heartbreaking.
That's the day you learn that Doctor Who can hurt you.
100%. You're like, oh,
you're like, oh no, I could be hurt.
And God, it hurt me so much, and I was like, God, I don't know about switching up who he comes like travels with and everything. And then I get a glimpse of Donna, and I'm like, never mind.
Oh yeah, because we get our first look at Catherine Tate as Donna Noble in this episode, because it ends with her appearing in the TARDIS.
Excellent.
Which is such a great reveal, and you're like, what the hell? Yeah. The Runaway Bride, which is the next episode, is the Christmas special of that year, was the first time that I took note of Murray Gold's score. Sure. I'd always appreciated the music in Doctor Who, but there's a specific track in The Runaway Bride that I was so obsessed with that I kept replaying, that I was like, I need the soundtrack. I need to listen to this track over and over again.
For me, I think where I really took note of it was, as I said, The Impossible Planet has a track that like really stands out to me. Also, Doomsday had a really important, had a really big one. But The Runaway Bride certainly, like, I think that's where he starts to get a lot of new energy into the Doctor's theme and his music, like for the 10th Doctor. And then everything like goes bananas, like cuckoo bananas, like whatever you might think of later seasons of Doctor Who, Matt Smith, whatever beyond that. Murray Gold's always killing it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Great music all around.
Again, notwithstanding the Whittaker era, because that's not Murray Gold, which is a mistake.
What do you got? What are your guys' opinions on Martha?
I love Martha. And I think it really sucks that, like, I understand the idea of having a character like her right after Rose, who also falls in love with him and recognizes this is unhealthy. I'm going to leave. And I'm like, there's value in that. I don't know why we had to do it with the black actor, and like kick her out of the show. I think she gets the shit end of the stick as a character, and because I like her as an actor, it's a bummer to see. Because I don't think she's like necessarily one of the greatest companions, but I do think she gets maybe the Ross deal of the modern companions.
Sure.
Like she's just kind of given the worst slot. Like she's between two of the best. And like, especially, this is where I think introducing Donna early maybe fucked her up a little bit. Because Donna will be the next companion. And even if you don't know that yet, after you follow Rose, just as Xander said, it's like you meet Donna and you're like, oh my God, Donna's great. And then it's like, cool, you like that lady? Here's Martha. What do you think of Martha? And it's like, wow, that's a lot of shit to put on Martha.
Yeah. No, especially because like Donna did become, I think, probably my favorite companion in New Who. Jess, I think that's correct. Yes.
She's mine. She's my favorite.
Yeah. I hate to say this, but I forgot about Martha.
Interesting.
I obviously like I see it now and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I remember all those episodes. It's like I remember enjoying them, but I think a lot of what Sparkz says lands with her getting a raw deal where she's not incredibly memorable aside from the arc of, oh, I like you. You're not really in a space where that you're going to be healthy for anyone. I'm going to go.
Sure.
I think it really says something that like, even when the BBC itself and other things are like, remember the good times, and they'll be like Eccleston, Billy Piper, David Tennant, Catherine Tate, good times. And then you're like, damn guys, what about Martha? Why do we never talk about Martha? I think
because like the way Martha's story ends with her having lived that year,
such a good part of the story where she goes around the world telling people about the Doctor. It's a really good companion story.
It is the one part of Martha's story that like I can immediately remember.
Right.
Everything else takes time, but that one bit of like her that whole year telling the story, going through all that, such a great scene, such a way to like utilize that character's dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, like I really think that she gets the raw end of the stick on this one, because like there's really nothing wrong with her, like as a companion, as an actress. Like she's got good chemistry with David Tennant. I think people just, in my opinion, unfairly get annoyed with the one-sided love story, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to try to write. Like I don't think they were wrong to write that story. I maybe if they had written a different one, maybe she'd be remembered better. But I don't know. I always liked Martha. I was on the Martha train from the jump.
Yeah, I really like Freema Egeman. I think that's how you say her last name. I really like what she's trying to bring to Martha. I just don't feel like the writing of the season and the structure of it serves her. And I think it's a bummer because like there's great episodes here with her. There's some really great stories, but I'll tell you what, and it's two of my favorite episodes in this. I think these episodes screw her, honestly. And it's Human Nature and the Family of Blood.
I was about to say the same thing.
Because while I think those are incredible episodes.
Yeah.
Boy, do I think they would work better for a companion if the companion was Donna. But it's specifically because Martha is in love with the Doctor, and that's something you know about her. And then we're doing this story where he forgets who he is and falls in love with someone else, a different human in front of her, that I'm like, this all kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like this, for the Martha angle of this is really crap.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought those two episodes up because they're two of my favorites. I don't remember liking them. much when I first watched it, but over time I've really become they're two of my favorites of the season by far.
I think about the ending of Family of Blood where he's like, and now we knew why the doctor told us to run. He was being kind.
Yeah.
Because he punishes them so severely he got put through.
I have never forgotten the track the track on this season of when he's crying, when John Smith is crying, like I don't want to be this person. I want to be me. I want like why would you take away my life? And like they imagine the life that they could have lived together, and that music, that swirling beautiful orchestra playing throughout this family life that John Smith could have had with this woman, and just to end it with opening the fob watch and becoming the Doctor again. It's just heartbreaking.
Very, very tough. And again, this is, as I alluded to earlier, this is where you get those sketches that's like, Doctor Who is canon, classic Doctor Who. There it is. Yeah. See some old guys' faces. I remember the fans all being like, "Oh, it is you, Doctor Who."
The part I think that highlights is that every companion gets, I think, some kind of agency in the story that I don't believe Martha really gets.
It's because Martha, as a character throughout the season, is forced to give up her agency in the pursuit of this love of the Doctor, and only gets her agency at the very end when she gets to say, I'm in love with you and you're not in love with me, and that's not good for me, so I'm leaving.
Which is a story arc is interesting, but it hurts her so much.
It robs her the whole time up to that point.
Yeah. Really, really unfortunate. The episode from this season that I remember the most is Gridlock.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There was something about it that felt very like it wasn't like an emotionally heavy episode. It wasn't like, this whole thing. It just, I don't know. There was something so very like sci-fi about it that stuck with me.
Sure.
And then the entire like exchange they have at the very end of that episode sticks with me as well. Like, I don't know. I think
the face of Bo.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole setup with the face of Bo is also so good.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there was something specifically about that episode that really was like, oh, this is, you know what? I think it was my first episode. I think this is why I remember it so fondly. Sure. I think Gridlock was the first episode I ever saw.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, but there's another two-parter in this season called Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. Not particularly memorable or great episodes, I don't think. I think they're fine. Andrew Garfield's in the first one.
Sure.
He plays a little New York kid, a little New York newsie who gets killed by the Daleks, and I just think that's really cool.
It's so wild. Just a few years later, he'd be Spider-Man.
Yeah, for real though.
The interesting thing I think about Gridlock, and like, it almost makes me want to watch them this way, is that Gridlock is like the third time we return to a rough idea of what's sketched out in The End of the World and New Earth. Like, he keeps getting back into like a similar, like, he's picking up on a narrative. This is something that Davies seems to be doing, is he's picking up at a similar point just a little further, which is kind of interesting. But I never watched them close enough to like, I wonder what that would feel like if you were watching it from the perspective of the people who are being revisited by the Doctor.
Sure. Especially because there's quite a few years between New Earth and Gridlock. Like within the timeline of the show. The Lazarus experiment is fine.
I'll shout out the Shakespeare Code. I think that's a solid episode.
That is a solid episode.
Yes. No, I agree.
It unfortunately has the line, good old J.K. Rowling, though.
What are you gonna do? He'd like just been in Goblet of Fire, like whatever.
That's true. It is unfortunate that has aged, because like that whole episode, he is like really like thirsting after J.K. Rowling. He's like, oh, wait till you read the 7th book, because it had to come out at the time.
Yeah.
And it's
You get it.
Still a
You
good
get it.
episode.
It's nobody's fault.
No, it's still a good episode though.
Of course, we have to talk about Blink.
Yeah, that's the introduction.
One of the most famous episodes in Doctor Who, because so many people used it as a tool for a jump on point, and for people who hadn't watched it yet.
And it kind of like piggybacks off of another episode. So I don't remember if season 4 does this, but season 2 and 3 both have episodes not from the Doctor's perspective. Love and Monsters was the first one with the alien from Clom. And that's a weird episode. And then, although it has a Scooby-Doo door run, which I've always appreciated.
Sure.
And this one, Blink, which is one of the most iconic episodes of the show.
Yeah. Is the one you were just talking about from season 2, is that the one where they're like in a group talking about the Doctor? Yeah,
and there's the big fat guy that's stealing people.
Yeah.
What's it? I just remembered. He's called the Absorbaloft.
Never changed Doctor Who.
He was a alien designed by a little kid, and the little kid won a contest, and they incorporated him into the show.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
I remember that episode being a ton of fun. Yeah, Blink.
And hang on, I'm not done. That episode ends with a blowjob joke.
They all should.
Because the Doctor saves the dude's like love interest, who's I think Moaning Myrtle from Doctor Who, and she's just in a slab of concrete, a face in a slab of concrete, and he the whole time he's been filming, so he's like, oh, we need to go now, because like the slab is like, you should turn off the camera now. I'm just saying, it's how the episode ends. It's really weird.
Sure. Well. Anyway. Davies is a little horny sometimes, so it is what it is.
Boy, if you've seen his Casablanca, you know how much that's true.
Sure. No, I mean, like, I know.
We all know.
I wanted to ask, like, no, I don't even want to ask. I'll just give my opinion about it. I don't think Blink is necessarily a great, hey, watch Doctor Who episode.
Yeah.
I think it's obviously a great episode of television. I think a lot of people could get on board with enjoying it, and they don't have to know a lot of Doctor Who stuff. So, like, if you just want them to enjoy a single episode of good television, it's like, yeah, sure. It's not, to me, like, you know what you're in for if you watch Blink.
Sure.
I don't think Blink is I think Blink is arguably too removed from the presence of the Doctor, and B, too high quality to measure against the average of Doctor Who. Like, you're not properly being prepared for the show you're going to watch if you're going to dive in with Doctor Who. Like, if you go from Blink to Rose, I think you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then you're going to hit the end of the world, and you'll be like, these are choices. And then you're going to hit the Solidity, and you'll be like, wow. Or let's say you only go back to Tennant. You'll be like, cool, fun, popping along, and pretty soon you'll hit School Reunion, and we've already talked about that one, so...
I don't disagree with that at all. I think Blink has a lot of funny moments, like when she's ripping the wallpaper, and it's the message from the Doctor telling her to duck and whatnot.
It's very sharp.
It introduces the Weeping Angels, which were immediately iconic villains.
This was back when Moffat was writing only hits, because you had The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances were the only two Moffats from the first season.
Yeah.
You've got The Girl in the Fireplace, which is the only Moffat story there, and then you get Blink, and like it's all just like hit after hit after hit. You're like, God damn, they're just killing it with these.
Which is why when he was announced as showrunner, we were all like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's very different being showrunner and then just being a writer on the show.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. I actually want him to come back as like to do an episode or two in the new series.
Oh, sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Yeah. Me
him and Chibnall probably, because Chibnall's also in the mix here. Chibnall, who would become showrunner for just the Whittaker era, like he's in the mix as a writer here pretty early on as well.
Yeah. Blink is Blink is so, again, it's so detached that people are like, oh, this is easy to jump in on because you don't need to know everything. And God, no, I think I just want to agree with you, Sparkz. It's too removed from Who. But
I mean, great episode.
God,
great episode.
Great episode. The amount of times that I saw the message
don't turn back,
the doctor
don't look away.
Yeah, that they used on like TV spots for like don't change the channel kind of stuff. It was on a whole bunch of YouTube videos, and like it was, I think really one of the more, like, I think it was one of the first real like Doctor Who memes that became like really popular.
Sure.
I think there's I think Who has like a few that became like really like
this
culturally relevant at large.
This episode also introduced wibbly wobbly timey wimey into the vernacular.
Yes. Yes.
Very important.
Yeah. Very important. Both really, really stuck. So no, there's something to be said about Blink not just being great at a great episode, but I think really a catalyst for Who into pop culture at large.
I will say I think it's like a turning point of where right around Blink is when it hits, like it starts to hit a fervor of people being like, Doctor Who can be really good. And like fans get rabid, like more people should be seeing this. This shit is like nuts. When it's on fire, it's on fire. And I do think like Blink is kind of the cresting over that wall a bit. And why when you get into that last season of Tennant, I think Doctor Who has started to really spin up in popularity.
You mentioned Chris Chibnall. I didn't realize that the first episode he wrote for Doctor Who wasn't this season. It's 42.
Yes, 42. Yeah.
So that's really interesting that this season has 2 future showrunners writing for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were all good friends, and so Chibnall took over as showrunner later down the road because he also started in the writer room on Doctor Who with Moffat and Davies, and like they're friends in real life, so like I get it. And like they're all classic Who dorks, so like he just makes choices as I think Davies was already more familiar with what it meant to be a showrunner when he started, and Moffat and Chibnall were not, and so I think they make fumbling choices.
I think what's interesting is that I this is not a criticism of either Moffat or Chibnall. I think Russell T Davies was more focused on introducing a lot of new and less focused on looking back at some of the classic. Again, not a criticism, because I really like how Moffat especially uses some classic Doctor Who material. The classic Daleks and the classic Cybermen both make appearances. The Ice Warriors, like all of that, like you don't see that stuff in the Davies eras. But I find it so interesting that, as Sparkz said, they are all 3 classic Who fanatics. Davies is the only one that really restrained himself from using classic Who elements. He was very much focused on what can we do new. If we introduce a classic Who villain, how do we make it new? How do we not make it look like it did back then?
Sure.
I find that really fascinating. And again, not a criticism of either of the future eras, because I really like them.
I think Davies wields the classics carefully.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say necessarily that what I'm saying is Moffat and Chibnall don't. I just think Davies is simply better at it.
Sure.
With how he is selective. While we're talking about how Blink is, again, because it's directly after Family of Blood and thus Human Nature, that's 3 episodes in a row where guess who doesn't really matter to the story? Martha. Jones.
Yeah.
And so like it's really hard when you have like 3 solid episodes in a row and you kind of are sitting there going, why is Martha here?
Yeah. It's too bad. But I want to talk about the 3-part finale.
Yeah.
Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and The Last of the Time Lords.
Sure.
The end of Utopia, I rewatched it last night. Because I hadn't seen it in quite a while, and that ending hits like really hard when Doctor Who was like on all cylinders for me, was when it was like, you know, the music, the Murray Gold music was like really energetic and like really pumping up. They're just pushing buttons, they're just flipping switches and pushing buttons, spouting nonsense at each other, and just David Tennant's yelling for some reason. You're like, I don't know why you're yelling, but I'm so interested.
Right.
Because like at the end of that episode, Professor Yana, who's this kind of like mild-mannered like professor that we've met at the end of time, at the end of the universe, is kind of like he's got a fob watch, and Martha knows what that is.
What a good way of bringing the fob watch thing back around too.
I love it so much. And like this season, more so than the previous two, had been incorporating like every episode influenced the finale. Almost like every episode was introducing elements that were going to pay off in the 3-part finale. The big one being the fob watch, but like it like really starts in Gridlock when he says you are not alone.
Right.
Oh man, how that hits.
Yeah, man.
It's like, so maybe you're not the last time. It's like, no, I am. He was wrong.
Yeah. And then it's revealed, and like the Doctor is like, it's great that there's another Time Lord, but which one? Because like that's a big factor. Which one could this be? And it's revealed that Professor Yana is the Master, which is not only is this, which by the way, as story structure wise, it's the only Time Lord it could be. Like it's not going to be like whoever. It's not going to be anyone else.
Right.
Trevor the desk clerk Time Lord.
Right. It's going to be the Master. But like from the Doctor's timeline, the Master was dead. He didn't know that the Master was fighting the Time War.
Right.
And so like he's like thinking to himself, like, who the hell could this be? Survivor of the Time War, all the Time Lords are gone. And then to have this big reveal be the Master, it's hits so well. And you just see David Tennant like stand there in front of the TARDIS talking to now John Sim, because Derek Jacobi regenerates. And the two of them just kind of having this moment where it's like, there's nowhere else for you to go, where it's just you and me. Please, like, let's talk about this. Let's have a heart to heart. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's such a good moment. Good. And then going into The Sound of Drums, and again, you get John Sim and David Tennant on the phone together, just like John Sim's like, where's Gallifrey? And he's like, it's gone. I burned it. It's all gone. And just that kind of like, I really like seeing the two Time Lords together, because we hadn't had Time Lord action in the past 3 seasons. And Jack comes back. Jack has a great entrance in the Utopia. Because especially if you're watching Torchwood at the time, which I was, the end of Torchwood season 1 ends with the hand bubbling and Jack taking it, running into an episode of Doctor Who. And like, that was such a good, like, holy shit, it's all connected, guys. Yeah, it's all connected.
That was a very hype moment, which is what Davies wanted, because he really wanted Torchwood to pop off too.
Yeah. And Torchwood season 1's pretty rough, but there's some good episodes in it, and that was specifically like really cool.
Yeah, I remember that hype. I remember it. Good times.
Yeah. No, the music that, I don't know, whatever song that played in The Sound of Drums.
Here come the drums. Sound of Drums.
Yeah, Here Come the Drums. God, that was such an earworm.
Yeah. Same. There's a lot of great, like,
Brandon and I listened to that a lot in high school together.
There's that, and I Can't Decide, which is in the beginning of the next episode, The Last of the Time Lords.
Sure.
There's a lot of really great moments. John Sim was a very good Master, I think. He's very fun.
Oh yeah.
We're introduced to Unit's Valiant, the Valiant kind of super aircraft carrier, Shield's helicarrier. And the Toclafane, when it's revealed in The Last of the Time Lords who they are, that they're the people that at the end of time, is so good. it's nice to have Jack back. I think Jack and David Tennant, John Barrowman and David Tennant work really well together.
I agree. It was a good time to bring Jack back into the story.
Yeah.
I thought that all worked really well. Again, like Martha's story of her going around and telling the story, and it revitalizes him and turns him young again because he's old and like in his Dobby phase.
Yeah, because he's like tiny.
Yeah.
That was weird.
It was
an interesting choice.
But what a man! It's wild that Jack Harkness really is the one thing connected through that arc of Tennant and even Eccleston is like, oh, it's Jack Harkness. That's the connecting thread here.
Yeah,
and like finding the like coming back to the hand from for the first Tennant episode. I remember quoting lines from Utopia, like we're from I'm a bit of a hermit. We're hermits united. Like I remember like quoting shit like that for like years. There's so many great moments in the finale that I really love.
Yeah, it's such a great, like it's really strong.
Yeah,
and I mean, God, John Simmons as the Master was so good. To have such little time to like really develop a character, and try to put in all that emotion, all that stuff, so well done. It was really good.
I think this is also a good time to talk about just like David Tennant's growing performance as the Doctor being really, really strong, because he gets to be like far more happy and carefree when he starts, because like Rose has brought joy into his life. And then when he loses Rose, that's him like sinking back into loss all over again. Loss becomes real to him, and like we get so many more layers of how that's affecting him, and like he's being constantly kind of re-traumatized by loss after that point, which he has to learn to kind of let go of.
Yeah.
And like Donna's the person who like ultimately helps him get more on a balanced path.
Yeah. John Sims, to speak about what Xander was saying, like the Master being revealed as the Prime Minister of England is such a good, horrifying reveal that the Doctor's greatest enemy now controls the country that he loves so much, like essentially public enemy number one and all that. Yeah, man. It's a good season.
Just good, just solid.
It's a very good 3-part finale for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we should probably move into season 4 then.
And frankly, the strongest stuff for Martha in the whole season.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Because that's where her, as you alluded to, Xander, that's where her agency gets to come in.
Yeah. So the Christmas special of that episode of that year was Voyage of the Damned, which I'm only going to mention because it's our first introduction of Bernard Cribbins as Wilfred Mott, who needs to be shouted out every single time because he's amazing.
He's wonderful.
I really liked Voyage of the Damned.
I really like
episode.
I like Voyage of the Damned too. It's also like the first time we get a clean, like, no matter how much they'd screw around with it after this, but he's the Doctor saying, "I am 903 years old." A solid like age date stated. It's a good speech.
And now there's no way of knowing how old the Doctor is.
No, but I won't get into that.
But this is the episode. This is the season where we get Donna, who is Xander already said. I think I already said my favorite companion of the new Who series.
Donna is, I think, the best companion. She's not my personal favorite, but that's just like a preference of taste.
Mm-hmm.
But she is my number 2 in favorite.
Oh, did we lose you?
Oh, I think.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying is simply that I think Donna is, in a broad sense, she is the best companion for the Doctor, especially for Tennant's Doctor at this point in time.
Right.
I think she isn't pining for him. She's not a person who will. She feels truly like his friend, which is not something we've had with new Who Doctor. And she brings a balance to him, and makes him the best version of himself that he can be.
For a moment, who is your favorite?
Clara.
Okay. See, I'm making the distinction between like who's the best companion and who's your favorite. I think Donna is still both for me, but it's a very, very close tie with Rory specifically.
Oh, I love Rory.
I love Rory. I love Rory so much more than his wife, whose name I can't remember.
But I think there's a solid argument to be made that is he really the Doctor's companion or is he Amy's?
Yeah, no, that's fair. But like, we're just saying companions here. We didn't.
No, I know. I like I said, there's an argument to be made, but it's really splitting hairs. But I think happy to give Rory his flowers. Rory is wonderful, and we'll talk about him. We'll talk about Clara at a later date.
Yeah, no, of course.
But it's one of those things where it's really close, and I think that to some extent it's just like more time with Clara.
Yeah. That's fair.
And if I'd had more time with Catherine Tate, this might be different. But I still think she is a very strong companion.
For the
and
one
a very
season
important
she gets real strong impression.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about what would be. No, for me it's Donna. We'll talk about Clara later, but I don't even think she cracks top 5 for me.
Yeah, that's a common thing I've heard. Forrest, our friend Forrest, flat out hates Clara.
Oh, I don't hate any companion. I want that clear.
Oh no, he hates Clara. He actively told me that he was really happy that because he hadn't even watched the season, but he was like, "I'm really happy she dies."
Oh,
my
buddy.
God.
He was like, "I'm really happy that's the way she's taken out of the story. Not that she leaves. I'm happy she dies." And I'm like, "Oh my God."
I want it on record. I have never felt that way about a companion.
Sure.
Yeah. But and we'll talk about my issues with Clara later.
Sure.
It's mostly writing and things like that. But but yeah, Donna so clearly like comes in like as a it's time to stop writing someone falling in love with David Tennant. It's time to start writing someone as his friend. And Catherine Tate and David Tennant are clearly great friends, and so like having that play off of each other is really good, like really bouncing off of that chemistry that's already just there.
Right.
It works so well, and their first episode together in this season, Partners in Crime, is really funny.
Yeah,
with the adipose.
With the adipose
guys, they were so popular as like plushies.
I had a stress doll. I had a stress doll with one.
They were so popular as stress dolls too. Man, they really capitalized with that one.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking through the episode list right now, and
I also want to shout out Fires of Pompeii, which I think is a good episode, but it's Peter Capaldi's first Doctor Who episode.
Yeah,
that's true.
Which is fun.
I love it because Peter Capaldi's my favorite Doctor.
Oh, and Karen Gillan's first episode.
Karen Gillan's also in that.
True.
Yeah.
But
Partners in Crime is really, really good. The reunion scene for the Doctor and Donna is so strong. Donna also has the benefit, to be honest with you, of I think a almost a perfect 10 run on episodes. And I mean by that these are all strong episodes for Doctor Who, and they all serve Donna too.
Sure.
Which is, as we just talked about, definitely not something that Martha got. And I don't even think always something Rose got either.
We have Planet of the Ood. The Sontaran episodes are pretty good.
Very good. Love them.
The Doctor's Daughter, classic. One of my favorites.
Don't we also get the Jadoon somewhere in here too?
Or
is that in a previous season?
No, it's at the finale. In the 2-part finale, they go to the Shadow Proclamation, and the Jadoon are working for them.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah. No.
Martha, by the way, is in the Centauran episodes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Martha also guest starred in an episode of Torchwood this same season.
That's true. I appreciated that. I kind of wanted Martha to stay on Torchwood because I would have been happy for that for her.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like she should have, or like that was the time to do a unit show that was led by Martha. That's the thing, is like Martha deserved another place to do more with that actor.
Justice
that
for Martha.
Yeah, Martha's also
for Martha.
Martha's also a companion. Like there are some things I kind of wish new Doctor Who would do, and I think we might get it at one point. We'll definitely get into like where I think they should have done it at a later date. But there are two things I kind of want Doctor Who to do. I kind of want a season with no set companion, and that the Doctor just like shows up, and a greater weight on the characters the Doctor encounters wherever they are. I know that's almost taboo, but I think it'd be really refreshing, especially if the Doctor's coming off like an important moment where it's like it makes a lot of sense to not have a companion right now.
Yeah.
And I think you could do it, and I think you get the flavor of that. We'll get into it with the Tennant specials. But we'll get there next time. But the other thing I want to see Doctor Who do is bring a companion. You could argue we're kind of doing that now, but I would like it for like a full season. Bring a companion back on to be with the Doctor for like, but like this is David Tennant getting back together with Donna. I'd like a new Doctor with an old companion actually coming back to the TARDIS, and I think Martha would be a great candidate for it.
You know who I'd legitimately want to see become Doctor companions? I tweeted about it just today. Is Clyde and Ronnie from Sarah Jane Adventures.
Sure.
I think they would legitimately be great companions for a future version of the Doctor.
Yeah, that could be fun. Yeah, it's one of the things those are two things I've really felt like I'd want to see, and like I'd want to see with Martha, but it's happening with Donna. So hey, Donna might go up in my rankings. Who knows?
Yeah,
it's true.
No, it's fair. There's so many bangers this season.
No, it's like every single one.
I want to shout out the Doctor's daughter. Like we have to, right? Like it's David Tennant's wife. It's Georgia Moffat. The actual daughter of the fifth Doctor. Like it's like this is such a cool episode, such a cool meta episode. Looking back at it now, and I know Big Finish has done stuff with Jenny, but I always lamented that she never came back in the show.
The absolute fan outcry to see her again in some capacity was insane, and to never have had a response to that, I honestly I think was a missed opportunity with the show.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's another Moffat episode, The Forest of the Dead.
Oh, don't go there yet. Don't go yet. Don't go there yet. Just the Sontaran episodes, like we said, Planet of the Ood, more Ood, good time with the Ood. Gotta love the Ood.
Yeah. Which one was Planet of the Ood? Which one was that?
Isn't that the one where it's focused on them being enslaved?
Oh yes, and they're on and then we visit them again later, and
the people are doing the thing where they're like, the Ood love being enslaved, and it's like, that's so true.
And then they're freed, and they have the whole thing where they start talking about Dr. Donna.
Oh yes, that's where the Dr. Donna starts showing up.
Where that starts. Oh man, really, really good. I love that whole like plot line so much.
I'm now thinking like I really need to go watch it back and actually watch all these episodes, especially with Donna coming back for the specials. I probably should just do that, because these are all top tier. So Silence in the Library, Force of the Dead, Stephen Moffat's two-parter episodes, which introduce River Song. Which is unbelievably exciting at the time.
Oh yeah.
People losing their goddamn minds, like, oh my god, someone from the future of his timeline. Holy shit.
At like the possibilities of where River so just a spoiler, because most of River's stuff happens in the Matt Smith era. I was very excited for River. I think ultimately River kind of falls flat during the Matt Smith era. We don't really get, I think it's kind of a missed opportunity with the character. Yes, I do really love the husband of River Song though, which is her final episode.
Yes.
Like
Very
I really loved that episode.
Very good.
But I really liked the idea of this future companion who might be more. Like, what is this character to her?
Oh, they
this
straight
diary?
up say, she says, "I'm your wife."
Yeah.
Like, and we're all like, "You're his what?"
Yeah. The whole how do I trust you? And she just said
Especially
name.
for a fandom that still had not forgotten or forgiven Rose being taken away. Being like, she's his what now? Like,
and the end of the episode, like it's very Stephen Moffat. It creates a terrifying villain that is kind of really poetic. He writes it really poetically. But one of the things that I always remember is the end of that episode where he's like, okay, yeah, we'll leave it. And then he like, why would I leave with a screwdriver? Why would I leave with a screwdriver? What's so important about this? I know I would have had a plan. I had years to think of a plan. And he like opens it and the thing is in there that you've been seeing, the terrifying thing. And you're just like, and he's just like, I got it. And he just sprints through the library and you're like, save her. Yes.
David Tennant is nothing if not a runner for this show.
Yeah.
His runs are iconic.
Yeah. Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead are really, really strong. And two of my favorite Moffat episodes, both because of the River Song execution at the time, but also because of the idea of the villain, this paper that has turned against you.
What's the creatures that live in the paper, the trees that were turned into paper.
Yes.
That live in the shadows.
I love it. I think that's really, really cool. Really cryptic, really creepy.
The imagery of the skeleton inside the suits.
Yeah.
Absolutely iconic.
And this would kind of like pop up. This pops up throughout all of Stephen Moffat's writings. This idea of like he, and honestly, it got a little old during his run. But like this idea, like you ever are too afraid to walk down an alleyway at night? Well, this is why. Like it's like the kind of like the instinctual fear that Stephen Moffat kind of like write a poetic, like, do you ever have deja vu? Well, this is why. Do you ever think? You ever talk to yourself do you ever talk to yourself when you're alone? Well, this is why. Like that kind of thing, where it's like it wasn't old yet, and it was still really exciting.
And I think that's what's so fun about
run is. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that I think that's what's so fun about the silence is a really clean execution of the idea, and like we'll get into them later, but like you're right about that. The seeds of that are here.
Yes. Yeah. I really like the silence, actually, come to think of it.
I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I'm pretty sure I'm right when I say this. I think Midnight is my favorite episode of Doctor Who.
Of all of Doctor Who, I'd really have to think about that. I was just about to say Midnight's a really good episode.
It's very high up there. The simplicity of it, the performance, the creepy concept of it, it's all so well done. And I mean, like that performance between David Tennant and that main girl who he ends up swapping positions with when he's doing the same speaking, and then she starts speaking before him. I'm like, God, this is so good. This is so good.
Yeah, it's so well written. It's so well executed. Midnight is, for my money, certainly probably one of the creepiest, if not the creepiest episode of Doctor Who. It's such a simple execution of it's a bottle episode, right? It's a low budget bottle episode that's truly terrifying.
They're so inventive and innovative with a limited budget and limited resources so that they could get their big Stolen Earth Journey's End finale that they want to have.
Yeah.
And like, but they take like, okay, so we can only work with this budget, and like we can't have Catherine Tate in a lot of the episode. We have to use a bunch more extras and be on basically a single set. How can we make that work? And they turn out like one of the best, like this is a Twilight Zone episode. This is like a great Twilight Zone episode. And like it's so succinct, it's so sharp, and the Doctor's there. And it's like, this is like arguably I would go to this before I would go to Blink. Even though I still
Mm.
think you're like hitting a higher quality tier, if you are trying to get someone into
Yeah.
Doctor Who, this gives you an idea more of at least putting the Doctor center of the story.
Sure.
100%.
Yeah, I think I agree with that one. I have nothing but praise for Midnight. I think it is truly just an exceptional episode that I love rewatching.
I think about it a lot. I think about the performance in it a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, there's a ton of incredible episodes. And maybe if I really like broke it all down and I sat down, I'd be like, no, maybe it's really this thing. But I'm like, Midnight's definitely like top of the pile and top of the mind when I think about what's a favorite episode.
Yeah.
Midnight's very, very high up there.
Well, that leads us to another 3-part finale, though. I get Turn Left. I would consider.
No, it is for sure.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Turn Left.
It's like a soft lead in. Doctor Who does these things sometimes where there's like a very clear 2-parter. You're about to head into one, Brandon, for the season you're in with Whittaker. Yeah. The third from the end episode is like a soft first part and then a 2-parter, but like it's basically a 3-parter.
Okay. Yeah.
I had to go through real quick and look for my favorite episode. But
what's your favorite?
What is it?
The Zygon invasion.
Sure, it's a good episode.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
The 2-parter. Yeah,
that's a good one. Okay, I Stolen Earth, Journey's End, Turn Left. That for me was before Endgame came out. Was my Endgame.
Sure.
Because I was watching Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures at the same time, right. And to go to have all 3 shows do this massive crossover where Davros comes back to steal the Earth. And by the way, we're still doing like the TARDIS like is constantly like rocking and like exploding everywhere as it flies. And I miss that. I'm so sad TARDISes don't do that anymore. Like I get it because like, come on, it's a little ridiculous, but like I miss just David Tennant like flipping switches, flying over, flipping another switch, like crashing that. Like I miss that era of Doctor Who. This for me was peak Doctor Who. Sure. I don't believe it will ever get better from it. I have acknowledged this. I accept it, and like this it's fine. But for me, it will never get better than this moment when they're trying to get in touch with the Doctor and they can't, and Torchwood and Sarah Jane hear the Daleks coming at them, and I've never forgotten Sarah Jane just holding her son and being like, "It's over, we're dead."
Right.
Like they're without the Doctor, this is it. And even Jack like holding Yonto and Gwen and just like we're all doomed.
Right.
There is nothing we can do. And having Rose come back and Jackie, I was excited to see Jackie for some
reason. Putting every companion and every like kind of companion back on the board for a whole big come together was a big deal. And it felt like it to bring all those people together. And you've got the whole bit where like Rose is showing up and you know it and we're getting there, but like she hasn't seen the Doctor yet and she's trying to and she even tries to get on the video calls, and it's like Harriet Jones being like, we've got one of the Doctor's companions here, and it's Martha, and she's like, who the fuck?
Like Harriet Jones coming back, like man, I was so ecstatic. Like when the bees are disappearing, like when that became like the clue that like took the Doctor away, and like this is where the Jadoon were coming because they're part of the Shadow Proclamation, and like he's just like, it's the bees, we're gonna trace the bees, and he's like running into the TARDIS, and the Shadow Proclamation is like, all right, we're gonna take your TARDIS now, we're gonna go to war, and the Doctor's like, yeah, let me just get the keys for you. Just like disappears. Like, why did they fall for that?
It's very, very strong. It's very sharp. It's well paced for bringing all the elements that it brought together, and it truly feels like a celebrate of everything Doctor Who had been doing up to that point.
Yeah. Jack and Sarah, and we get Yonto and Gwen from Torchwood, and K9 has a great moment, and like I I can't overstate. I cannot overstate just how, like, I still watch that episode. I still watch it frequently, and every single time, I don't care. I'm not being hyperbolic. I cry
Yeah.
at multiple points during this episode, during
It's
all the reunions, during all the scared moments. Like it never got better for me.
sure. I mean,
it really
it's. Oh, go ahead, Xander.
it really did such a great job at making it seem like a finale, and not just like a finale for Tennant's run, but it really felt akin to a series finale in like how it was treated. Whether they were going to be like, oh yeah, we're definitely making a new Who season or not, or whatever the background of that was. It's really interesting that it's treated like that, and I think it works so well because there's an inkling of that in Doctor Who afterwards, but never to that level.
Mm-hmm.
There's the send-offs have like, yeah, a story and like some reminiscing, but never quite like this. And it really, like, it's weird to have two endings, honestly, with a 3-parter and then the specials.
Yeah, no, for real.
It really is interesting, and we'll get to the specials eventually. But the fact that they have such a massive reunion really goes to show like how much they had done up until that point,
which is really surprising. Like, it's just 3 years.
Yeah, it's
just 3 years, and it feels like 7 things are packed in.
Yeah,
like 7 years of work are packed in there, because you got like Torchwood and Sarah Jane, especially if you're engaging with those. It's a lot piled into each other. But it's very, very strong, and much to your point, like, I'm really glad that there is this, and then there's Tennant specials, because, well, I think this is a really satisfying season finale, and it's like really great to have the celebration of bringing everyone together. If he regenerated at the end, I would feel like, damn, I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more of a story about him on his way out the door. And like, you get that by having those specials. You get a story about him.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really great, let's celebrate that this crazy idea of New Who has worked. And let's celebrate everything about that. And then it's also, after that, now let's celebrate that David Tennant's an incredible doctor.
Yeah. There's so many moments that I would love to like just shout out. They're obviously Turn Left is a very good episode. I know, but mostly just, but the actor who got to play Davros is awesome. The fact that it did tie off the 2-part finale from season 2, which bled into the with Dalek Khan coming back again after he came back in the Daleks in Manhattan, and having being the one to trick Davros and being like, this crazy Dalek's like, I flew into the time vortex itself and pulled Davros. And, like, it's just like absolutely insane,
right?
And he's just like playing Davros the whole time until like the Doctor could like defeat him. He's like, it was me, Davros. And like, go ahead.
No. I just the ending to Donna's arc as well.
Yeah.
And having that play into everything, and it just like, yeah, there's this whole like celebration of like everyone coming together, and it's this massive moment, and then just the absolute gut punch that the end of Donna's storyline is.
Because you get the big just, like the bit, hey, we did it. We beat the Daleks. We won, but at the cost of Donna. Donna is who we've lost in this war. And I love the ending when they're all piloting the TARDIS, and like he just walks up, is like, okay, you touch that, and Jackie, don't touch anything. Just go over there. Don't touch anything. It's real. Like, I think about that all the time. But the best joke in the whole episode is one that a lot of people don't even. I'm sure you guys remembered it, but like a lot of people missed it. The Daleks in Germany don't say exterminate. They say exterminieren. There is yelling exterminate in German, and it's incredible.
God. Yeah, I think I really do think that as a culmination of everything, it serves so well to close so many loops. It's very emotional. If you're attached to these characters, it's super, super emotional. Really, really love it. Hate that Martha ends up with Mickey. Really, really love it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Incredible story. I don't know why they had to do Martha even dirtier than they already did, but
once again, the Murray Gold soundtrack, like
of course,
on point, like so good. And then we get everyone saying goodbye, and I really like Sarah Jane's goodbye, where it's like you like to think that you're alone, but you've got the biggest family in the universe. And it's such a great, like, kind of like of course, like this, we're your family. And that was when like Doctor Who really felt like everyone he had ever met was his family and could interact with him at any time. And it's something that I kind of wish that Moffat would have played with a bit more. I know that there was a lot of, he probably wanted to distance himself from, obviously Sarah Jane, Elizabeth Sladen would pass away during, I think, the first season of Moffat's era. And like, but you know, Jack never came back, or like Martha and Mickey never came back. Not that I want them, but like but they never did. And so like I really love that kind of feeling of like wherever the Doctor is on Earth, he's got this big family of people that he can call upon. And it was really important to me. But you're absolutely correct. Like I don't know what the hell they were thinking putting Mickey and Martha together. That was ridiculously dumb.
Very upsetting.
Very
all
upsetting.
Right.
And also the way that Tumblr took to that last message from the Doctor to Donna about her for a moment being the most important person in the universe.
Yeah.
Oh man, the amount of young the amount of the youths just being like, we matter.
Yeah.
Well, that was what's so great about Doctor Who, and that it really felt like Donna was the first companion that had a like that had like a destiny attached to her, like this idea that she would become the Dr. Donna. Was not something that had happened in Doctor Who before, but it was something that would happen to Doctor Who next time, right? Like it became like the Doctor could just pick you up. It didn't matter who you were, it didn't matter if you were important or not. Everyone was important to the Doctor. He would just pick you up, and you'd be a random everyday schmo. That's what I really liked about the Davies era of Doctor Who. That like Billy Piper and Freeman Agyeman and even Catherine Tate, to an extent, although I'll admit,
right?
They were everyday people. They were not important, chosen ones that the Doctor was drawn towards. They just happened to be at the right time, at the right place, and that's where, and they became the Doctor's companions. And it's something that I don't think that I really appreciated about it. And I did then, and I still do now, that like you could just be walking on the street and the TARDIS will show up and you could just go travel with the Doctor. Like that's how it felt.
Sure.
I think they really nailed that idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Doctor Who's good.
Doctor Who is good.
Doctor Who's good.
I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot more we could say about so much here.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
If we had really decided to go like episode by episode or like episode chunks by episode chunks, this is hours, multiple takes and recordings.
This is its own podcast.
Its own podcast.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, really love, especially this last season with Tennant, with Donna. Very excited for them to return. But I'm also really excited to talk with you guys more about the other stuff that happened after this in Doctor Who.
It really is. It really does feel like such separate chunks.
Each showrunner really feels like its own distinct kind of show.
Yeah, and there's something to be said as well for how the end of Tennant feels like a series finale. Is that Eccleston flowed so easily, story wise and plot wise, into Tennant's run,
right?
That there was, I think, maybe an expectation of that also happening into the next Doctor. That you would continue with either these companions or the things he's been set up, and they're like, no, we're wrapping everything up. This is all done. Completely separate thing. Still same Doctor. All this stuff did happen, but we're moving on. And
they wanted to make a new jump on point.
Yeah, right. It was interesting.
We do get a regeneration though, in was it Journey's End, Stolen Earth? David Tennant. The cliffhanger of the episode is David Tennant's regenerating, and everyone's like, "Wait, hang on, what's happening now?"
Yeah, and then he's like, "Don't worry, I'm just going to make a second me."
Yeah, the meta crisis Doctor,
and give it to Rose so she can
ban
it.
Yeah,
no, but for real, that's exactly what happened.
I mean, yeah,
it's me, and I'll grow old. It's still me. Don't worry about
it. When he says goodbye to Rose again, and Rose is like, "What were you going to say to me on the beach all those years ago?" And he just goes, and the Metacrisis Doctor is the one who says it, and they kiss, and you're like, oh
yeah.
The Doctor can't have it, but that guy can.
But that guy
me again.
I do also like when he says like, look at him. He's full of rage, and he's reckless, and all these things that he says, and he's like, you know who that is? That's me when I first met you.
Yeah.
And he's like, and you changed that. She says to Rose, and I'm like, arguably Donna's the person that changed a lot of that, but whatever, sure.
We'll take it.
There's also I love Bernard Cribben's last moments with the Doctor when he leaves Donna with them, and he locks on the door, he's like holding her in the rain, and he's like, she was better with you, like he's yelling, he's like you can't do, like, she was your friend, she was better with, like, I've always remembered the line, she was better with you, and like how heartbreaking it is, him pleading with him to fix what has happened to Donna, and the Doctor being like, I can't, she'll die.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see we'll see how he fixes it.
So an interesting thing we can definitely talk about here is, Davies got pretty chewed out for making that choice over the years, and has openly reflected on it and been like, yeah, maybe that was too shitty to do to Donna. And that's one of the reasons why, for sure, we're getting Donna back in this story, is that Davies has, in later years, felt,
we're gonna fix this.
That wasn't a good
choice.
Fix
this.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it.
I can't say that I'm very excited to. I'm normal levels of excited to get into the specials, and then I'm very excited to get into the whole Matt Smith stuff.
Yeah, so next time we're going to talk about the David Tennant specials, which are Planet of the Dead to the End of Time Part 2. And then we're going to do all of Matt Smith?
All of Matt Smith.
All right.
The whole chimichanga.
Boy, that's only 3 seasons, right?
It's only 3 seasons and some specials.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's doable. 3 seasons. We just did 3 seasons.
Yeah, that's what
exactly.
It's sized out just fine.
It feels longer for some reason.
It always does.
That's what she said. All right. I don't know why I decided to end this episode.
This does include. So going all the way through Matt Smith does mean going all the way through Day of the Doctor and Time of the Doctor as well. All the way up to his regeneration.
I cannot wait to talk about the Day of the Doctor with you guys.
Sure.
All right, so that'll do it, guys. So stay tuned for the next one. And I assume we'll probably be back to talk about the new specials also at some later date down the line.
Yeah.
We will. Which would be a lot of fun.
That's the plan. Hopefully with some other friends from the Fake Nerd podcast.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right,
not
guys. Well,
me.
that'll do it.
No. Still with you. You're still on the ride. We're just gonna also probably have Ryan.
Xander, they're coming to Disney Plus. It's never been easier.
That's
Never been
true.
easier.
That's true. It never has.
All right, so that'll do it, guys.
Dog,
So
they're already filming the next season.
I know. Not the we have 2 seasons of Shooting Otway. One of them is filmed. One of them is currently filming. Wild. Okay, that'll do it, guys. Stay tuned for the next one whenever that comes out. But of course, this is Fick Nerds Watch. There's tons of Fick Nerds Watch that you can check out now that the strikes are over. So stay tuned for a lot of that stuff. Go to our website at ficknerdpodcast.com to find links and subscription and place where you can subscribe to everything that we're going to do. The post-strike stuff is start coming out soon. So be sure if you want to catch up on that stuff, be sure to go to that website. It's all going to be updated there. As best as I can. I'm going to do my best. Of course, check out our TeePublic and our Patreon if you'd like to support us financially. We greatly appreciate it. But all that is on our website as well as linked below, which is our website. Once again, that, by the way, I didn't say what it is. It's fakenerdpodcast.com. You should know that by now. Unless you are a Doctor Who fan who has never watched this show because we've never covered Doctor Who before, in which case, welcome. Go to fakenerdpodcast.com. So that'll do it. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Fick Nerd Podcast. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for AtomicEtham.com. That's where you can find those writings. Sparkz, where can people find you?
You can find me excited to travel further in space and time at Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
And Xander, where can people find you?
Hey, you can find me neither on Instagram or Twitter, but you can find me on Twitch at Jack in the Box.
You're on Instagram.
Not as Jack in the Box.
Where are you on Instagram? I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, I got my own personal Instagram. I don't need the world to see my Instagram.
Yes, you do.
Hey man, if I don't have to do it, he don't have to do it.
That's fair. All right, guys. That'll do it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, subscribe on all your podcatchers of choice, and rate and review wherever you get us. And until next time, stay fake nerds.